thank you. I'm very nervous to be up here, but yeah, okay. So this is my presentation on visualizing longitudinal geospatial data, and my name is Andrew Kim. So a little bit about me before I get into my presentation. I am a junior in high school, which is most definitely not the most fun year, but at least I'm not a senior yet, so thanks for that. But some of my interests are NBA, basketball, video games, and movies. My purpose in life, I suppose, is to make an impact in the world. Not like billions of millions of people, but to the people around me, like my friends and family. Okay, so for table of contents, I have my data used for my research, motivation, process, the projects, challenges, and takeaway, which leads into my future projects. Okay, so for the data used, I use CSV and JSON. CSV is a comma-separated list, typically in a table structured format. And the image on the right you see right there is a CSV dataset, and it's easier to import into spreadsheets such as Google Sheets. In JSON, it's a JavaScript object notation, which is typically used to exchange data between server and web. This can be parsed and translated to be applicable with different programs and coding languages, and in my case, Python. So for the motivation, as you see, if you go back and look at all like those data and all those lines, it's hard to have a takeaway, have a conclusion due to the sheer amount of data. There's thousands of, even hundreds of thousands lines of data, and it can be hard to read for those who are inexperienced with CSV and JSON. But through visualization, we can make insights which is applicable to the real world and make necessary changes that need to be made. Okay, so for the process, I downloaded my data from Kaggle, and some of that data needed to be parsed and specified and classified. Some of that would include longitude and latitude, which were consistent with all three of my projects. As I extract that data, I need to graph those plots on a map using Plotly ScatterGeo. So for my first research, I researched earthquakes. Now, as you see, these earthquakes right here, and I align it with tectonic plates. You can make a connection that plate tectonics and with convergent boundaries is which basically when plate tectonics push up against one another cause earthquakes, and this is typically alongside the coast, as these are the plates that make up our continents. Now, using this knowledge, we can minimize harmful effects as the infrastructure in these areas. We can use that to build infrastructures that are less susceptible to earthquake damages and less overall minimize harmful effects. So for the global climate, I don't know how to play the video. There we go. Okay, so as I play in the video, I'll explain the circle, the size of the circle, and basically how red the circle is depicts how hot and how, basically how hot and the temperature. The redder it is, the bigger it is, basically scales on how hot the temperature is. Now we can make a historical correlation, as in the beginning of the video there was a huge spike in the temperature. This can be correlated to the Industrial Revolution, as during this time there's an increase in vehicles, production, factories, and we can also see the heat is centralized around the equator due to it being closer to the sun. And also, using this time lapse, there's a rise in global temperature. Admittedly, the rise in temperature towards like the latter end of the video is not as significant as it is in the beginning, but if you were to continue in that exponential growth, we would all be burned to a crisp right now, so thankfully that isn't the case. And for air quality, there are four main points, not main points, but the four main places with the worst air quality. That would be the US, Europe, India, and East Asia. Now this is most likely due to dense populations, which increase pollution, and also due to fossil fuel emissions and gas emissions. And these all increase poor air quality. And it's very small here, but like right towards like a bit above the Middle East and towards like East Europe, there's like this one red dot, and that's due to the fact that that is where there's the most fossil fuel emissions. That is near Turkey. I don't know exactly which country, but yeah, that is with the most fossil fuel emissions, which leads to the poorest air quality. And some challenges I faced while doing this project was that there was inconsistent data. So some of these data points were last updated this year. Some of the points were updated way back in 2019. Another error or challenge I faced was error within data. So for example, there were the air quality, there was negative air quality, which is impossible as it is correlated to the particles in the air, and also using multiple sources. Sometimes they would use like different locations or different ways of measuring temperature and air quality. And so a takeaway. Through visualization, it's able to provide new perspectives, and which is could provide changes and application to the real world, which leads to my future project as I want to expand further with visualization by pairing visualization with statistics. Thank you.
So any question from the audience? Okay, so if you don't have any question yet, you can just think about the question. And so I have a question about this. So where did you get this data?
Most of my data was through Kaggle, and I use like different data sources. I tried finding the one with the biggest amount of data, so I could have like the more broad and have not just be specific to a certain country.
And from the slide, that I can see some of the like interpretation of the meaning of the data.
Mm-hmm.
So did you do it yourself, or you got some other research review about that?
Well, I did it. Well, I guess with prior knowledge by looking at the maps, I did it myself. As I wanted like to just look, because I didn't want to make stuff up that didn't align with my like actual images or the things that I came up to visualize. So yeah, it was with my prior knowledge and use what I saw to make correlations.
I see. Yeah, because I also see that these days data science itself is very important thing that we have to learn these days. But finding some meaning from the data is also another important part. So I think that finding that part was really great in your presentation. So any question from the audience?
What tool, maybe you mentioned this, but what tool did you use to actually plot the data on the map?
Plotly scatter geo, so that was basically with like Plotly, and then inputted that data and then plotted it out for the map.
The other comment I had is so this county, LA County and Orange County have a lot of their geospatial data publicly available for a bunch of different things, including like ranging from restaurant inspections all the way up to like health ratings, car pollution. So that will be, if you care more about like looking at local things and plotting that out and to see how things behave in your own neighborhoods, I highly recommend that as a source. I personally use it to find new restaurants that I want to go and explore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you always go to Korean restaurants.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what last time I talked about, where like using like the data that is in LA County, especially like for homelessness, and that was something that was like a possibility for me to do in the future.
Okay, and one more question for me. So do you have any specific data you want to visualize as in the future?
Not yet, but I mean, as time passes, we'll see.
So if you don't have any more questions, then yeah, again, thank you for your presentation.